Sir, step away from the construction equipment.
Sir, I'm the project architect. I'm just inspecting the foundation work.
This is a restricted construction site. You don't belong here.
I designed this building. My name is literally on the permit posted right there. Anyone can read a sign. Turn around and put your hands behind your back. You're arresting the city architect for supervising a city project?
Officer Ethan Bell had been with the Denver Police Department for just 6 months when he made a decision that would destroy his career before it started. He was 24 years old, fresh from the academy, and convinced that the black man in a hard hat inspecting construction equipment at 7 a.m. must be stealing something. The man was Alan Foster, the city's lead architect, overseeing a $12 million municipal project that he had designed from the ground up. What Bell did next, ignoring Foster's credentials, dismissing his blueprints, and arresting him in front of his own construction crew, would cost the city $3.1 million and expose how rookie officers with zero experience can create maximum damage in minimum time. Denver, Colorado, the heart of downtown where glass towers meet historic architecture, where million-dollar construction projects reshape the cityscape block by block. It was 7:15 on a Tuesday morning in October, the kind of crisp autumn day when the Rocky Mountains create a stunning backdrop for urban development. The Denver Civic Center renovation was entering its most critical phase, requiring the expertise of the man who had spent 3 years bringing the project from concept to reality. Before we dive deeper into this unbelievable story, I'm curious to know where you're watching from around the world. Drop your location in the comments below, and if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to hit that button. We bring you documented cases of injustice and accountability that mainstream media often overlooks. Your support helps us keep shining light on these critical stories. Alan Foster had been Denver's lead municipal architect for 15 years. 15 years of designing fire stations that saved lives, libraries that educated communities, and civic buildings that served hundreds of thousands of residents. He held a master's degree in architecture from the University of Colorado, a professional license that required continuous education and ethical standards, and a reputation built on delivering complex projects on time and under budget. His colleagues called him meticulous. City officials called him indispensable. Construction crews called him the architect who actually understood how buildings got built. At 42 years old, Foster had earned his position through brilliance, dedication, and an unusual hands-on approach that set him apart from architects who stayed in their offices. While others reviewed progress through photos and reports, Foster arrived at construction sites before sunrise to toolingly inspect every critical phase of work. He understood concrete chemistry, steel tolerances, and foundation engineering because he learned construction from the ground up, working summers as a laborer during college to pay for his education. The Denver Civic Center renovation represented the culmination of Foster's expertise. A $12 million project that would transform a 1960s municipal building into a modern center for citizen services. Foster had spent 2 years in design, navigating city council meetings, community input sessions, and budget negotiations. Every line on every blueprint carried his professional seal. Every permit bore his signature. Every construction decision required his approval. The project employed 45 workers, supported local contractors, and would serve Denver residents for the next 50 years. But someone was watching Foster work. Someone who couldn't process what he was seeing. That Tuesday morning, Foster arrived at the construction site at 6:45 a.m., earlier than usual because the concrete pour scheduled for yesterday had been delayed by weather. Critical foundation work couldn't proceed without his inspection and approval. He drove his personal pickup truck, parked in the designated area, and gathered his inspection tools, blueprints, and tablet computer loaded with project specifications. He wore his standard construction site attire, orange safety vest over a blue work shirt, yellow hard hat, steel-toed boots, and dark jeans. Professional, practical, appropriate for someone whose job required both office work and field supervision. Foster's morning routine was methodical and documented. He signed in with the security guard, checked the overnight progress reports, and began his systematic inspection of the foundation work. The concrete had cured properly, the rebar placement met specifications, the waterproofing membrane was correctly installed. Everything looked excellent, which meant the project could proceed to the next phase without costly delays. Officer Ethan Bell had graduated from the Denver Police Academy just 7 months earlier. At 24 years old, he represented the department's staffing solution to a citywide officer shortage that had left patrol beats understaffed and rookies working solo sooner than ideal. Bell had grown up in suburban Denver, attended community college for 2 years, and decided on law enforcement after struggling to find direction in his early 20s. His academy instructors noted enthusiasm but questioned his decision-making under pressure. His field training officer had recommended additional supervision, but departmental needs outweighed individual concerns. Bell's patrol route included downtown Denver, where construction sites, homeless encampments, and early morning business activity created a complex environment requiring experience and judgment. His training emphasized being proactive, identifying suspicious activity, and protecting property from theft and vandalism. But Bell's definition of suspicious had been shaped by assumptions he'd never examined. To him, expensive construction equipment plus early morning hours plus black man equaled potential theft. The possibility that the black man might own, design, or supervise the entire project never entered his consideration. Bell had driven past the Denver Civic Center construction site twice during his shift, noting the lone figure moving around expensive equipment at an unusually early hour. On his third pass, he decided to investigate. In his mind, he was being thorough, protecting taxpayer property, preventing crime before it happened. He radioed his location to dispatch, parked his patrol car at the curb, and approached the construction site with the confidence of someone who believed his assumptions were facts. The moment their eyes met, two different realities collided. Foster saw a rookie officer about to make a terrible mistake. Bell saw a black man who couldn't possibly belong in this space of authority and expertise. Neither could predict that this encounter would end careers, cost millions, and expose how quickly inexperience mixed with bias could create catastrophic injustice. Foster was measuring elevation changes when he heard footsteps approaching across the gravel. He looked up and saw a young police officer walking toward him with purpose and suspicion. Foster's stomach dropped slightly. He'd been a black professional in America for 2 decades. He knew how these encounters could unfold. He set down his measuring equipment and prepared himself for a conversation he'd hoped never to have at his own job site. The confrontation began with Bell's hand resting on his radio, a gesture that immediately signaled authority and potential threat. Foster recognized the body language from his years navigating professional spaces, where his presence was questioned. He kept his movements slow and deliberate, his voice calm and respectful, even as frustration built beneath his professional composure. "Good morning, officer. I'm Alan Foster, the project architect for this renovation. Is there something I can help you with?" Bell's expression didn't soften. If anything, it hardened with skepticism. "This is a restricted construction site. What are you doing here this early?" Foster gestured toward the foundation work he'd been inspecting. "I'm conducting a required inspection of yesterday's concrete pour. I need to verify it meets structural specifications before we proceed to the next phase." He pointed to his tablet computer displaying technical drawings. "These are the architectural plans I designed for this project. Every detail here requires my professional approval." Bell glanced at the tablet but didn't examine it closely. "Anyone can pull up construction plans online. I need to see identification and proof you're authorized to be here." Foster reached slowly into his shirt pocket and pulled out his driver's license and professional architect's license. Both documents clearly identified him as Alan Foster, registered architect in the state of Colorado. "Here's my ID and my professional license. I've been the lead architect on this project for 3 years." Bell examined the documents briefly, then handed them back with obvious doubt. "These could be fake. How do I know you didn't just print these at home?" Foster felt his professional patience wearing thin, but he maintained his composure. "Officer, those are official state's documents with security features and holograms. My professional license requires annual renewal and continuing education. You can verify my credentials with the Colorado State Board of Architects." "I'm not calling anyone to verify anything," Bell replied curtly. "If you really work here, where's your company vehicle? Where's your hard hat with a company logo? Why are you here alone without any supervision?" Foster pointed to his yellow hard hat sitting on his truck's tailgate. "There's my hard hat. I drive my personal vehicle because I'm not a construction worker. I'm the architect. I'm here alone because I'm the senior professional who doesn't need supervision to inspect my own project." Bell's radio crackled with routine dispatch traffic, but he ignored it, focused entirely on what he perceived as Foster's deception. Architects don't get dirty on construction sites. They sit in offices and draw pictures. This architect supervises every aspect of construction to ensure quality and safety. Foster responded, his voice carrying a slight edge of frustration. "I've been doing hands-on project management for 15 years. My job doesn't fit your stereotypes, officer." Bell took a step closer, his posture becoming more aggressive. Stereotypes? I'm investigating suspicious activity. A man with no company identification, no official vehicle, alone at an expensive construction site before normal business hours. That's not stereotyping. That's police work. Foster pulled his tablet closer and scrolled to a document that showed his electronic signature authorizing the concrete pour that was now being inspected. Look at this work order. It has my digital signature, my professional seal, and my authorization for this specific phase of construction. I'm documented as the responsible architect. Bale didn't look at the screen. Digital signatures can be faked. Work orders can be copied. You're showing me electronic documents that could be produced by anyone with basic computer skills. The conversation was becoming surreal. Foster found himself in the bizarre position of trying to prove he belonged at his own workplace. Officer Bell, Foster said, reading the name tag. Walk with me to that permit box mounted on the fence. Every permit for this project lists me as the architect of record. My professional seal is on every document. Bell shook his head. I'm not walking anywhere with you. If you really belong here, you can prove it from right where you're standing. Foster gestured toward the construction trailer at the far end of the site. My project files are in that trailer. I have keys to every area of this construction site because I designed it and I supervise it. What would it take to convince you that I'm exactly who I say I am? Start by explaining why you're being so defensive, Bell replied. If you really work here, why are you arguing instead of just providing simple proof? Foster stared at Bell in disbelief. I've shown you my identification, my professional license, my work authorization, my electronic documents, and I've offered to show you project files. What proof are you looking for that I haven't already provided? Bell keyed his radio. Dispatch, I need backup at the Denver Civic Center construction site. I have a subject who claims to work here, but can't provide adequate verification. Foster's heart sank as he heard the backup request. Officer Bell, you're escalating a situation that doesn't exist. I'm a city employee doing my job. You can call the planning department. You can call my supervisor. You can call the construction company. Everyone will verify exactly what I'm telling you. I'm not making phone calls based on your suggestions, Bell responded. I'm conducting an investigation based on what I observe, and what I observe is someone who can't adequately prove their right to be here. A construction truck pulled into the site's entrance. Foster recognized it as belonging to Elias Ford, his construction foreman who typically arrived around 7:30 a.m. to prepare for the day shift. Foster felt a moment of relief. Here was someone who could instantly verify his identity and end this absurd confrontation. Elias parked near Foster's truck and walked over, immediately noticing the police presence. Morning, Alan. Everything okay here? Foster turned to Bell with validation clearly written on his face. Officer, this is Elias Ford, the construction foreman. He can verify that I'm the project architect. Bell's expression didn't change. Sir, do you know this individual? Elias looked confused by the question. This is Alan Foster. He's the architect. He designed this entire project. I've been working with him for 6 months. Bell wasn't satisfied. How do I know you two aren't working together? How do I know you're not both trespassing here? Elias pulled out his phone and showed Bell a text message thread between him and Foster discussing the morning's inspection schedule. Look, here are our messages from yesterday planning today's work. Alan needed to inspect the foundation before we start the next phase. Bell glanced at the phone but dismissed it immediately. Text messages can be sent between anyone. That doesn't prove anything about your authorization to be here. Foster watched in growing amazement as Bell rejected every piece of evidence presented to him. Professional licenses, work orders, witness testimony, documented communication, all dismissed as insufficient or potentially fraudulent. It was becoming clear that Bell had decided Foster didn't belong here, and no amount of evidence would change his mind. Officer Bell, Foster said, his professional patience finally exhausted, you have multiple forms of identification, witness verification, and documented proof of my authority to be here. At what point does your investigation become harassment? Bell's hand moved toward his handcuffs. At the point where you start questioning my authority instead of providing cooperation, turn around and place your hands behind your back. Foster felt the moment crystallize. Despite every piece of evidence, despite witness testimony, despite logic and reason, he was about to be arrested for the crime of being a black architect, inspecting his own project. You're really going to arrest me for doing my job? Bell stepped behind Foster and reached for his handcuffs. I'm arresting you for trespassing and failure to provide adequate identification. The sound of metal clicking shut would echo through Foster's career. through Bell's future, and through a city about to learn how much it costs when rookie assumptions override professional reality. The handcuffs were tighter than necessary. Foster felt the metal dig into his wrists as Bell guided him toward the patrol car, his orange safety vest and yellow hard hat creating a surreal image of a construction professional being criminalized at his own job site. The irony wasn't lost on him that he was being arrested while wearing the exact safety equipment his architectural specifications required for all site personnel. "This is insane," Foster said, his voice carrying both anger and disbelief. "You're arresting the city architect for inspecting city property that I designed." Bell remained unmoved. "You can explain your story at the station. Right now, you're being detained for trespassing and providing false information to a police officer." Elias Ford stood frozen, watching his project architect being handcuffed by a rookie officer who had rejected every piece of evidence presented to him. Ford pulled out his phone and began recording, realizing that documentation would be crucial for what was clearly about to become a massive legal and public relations disaster. "Officer, I'm recording this," Ford announced. "You're arresting the lead architect of this municipal project. This is going to be a problem for everyone involved." Bell glanced at the phone but continued walking Foster toward the patrol car. "Sir, step back and stop interfering with police business." More construction trucks began arriving for the 8 a.m. shift change. Workers emerged from their vehicles to see their respected architect being placed in the back of a police cruiser. The scene defied logic. Foster was known throughout the Denver construction community as a consummate professional, someone who had earned respect through competence and fair treatment of workers. Seeing him handcuffed was like watching a trusted family member being arrested. Miguel Santos, a veteran electrician who had worked on 3 previous Foster projects, approached Elias with confusion. "Why is Alan in a police car? What happened?" "Rookie cop thinks he's trespassing," Elias replied, still recording. "Wouldn't verify his credentials, wouldn't listen to me, wouldn't check the permits. Just decided Alan doesn't belong here." Santos pulled out his own phone and started filming. "This is crazy. Alan designed this whole building. His name is literally on the permits, posted right there on the fence." More workers arrived and began documenting the scene. Foster could see through the patrol car window as his construction crew gathered, their faces showing anger and disbelief. These were professionals who had worked with him for months, who knew his expertise, who respected his leadership. They understood that they were witnessing their architect being criminalized for existing while black at his own workplace. Bell called for transport as backup arrived. Officer Sarah Martinez stepped out of the second patrol car, took one look at the scene, and immediately recognized something was wrong. A dozen construction workers with phones out, recording a man in professional work attire sitting calmly in a patrol car wasn't the typical response to arresting a legitimate trespasser. "Bell, what's the situation?" Martinez asked. "Trespassing suspect claims to be the project architect but couldn't provide adequate verification." Martinez walked over to the permit box mounted on the construction fence. She examined the architectural drawings posted inside, noting Foster's professional seal and signature on every document. She returned to Bell with a concerned expression. "Those permits list him as the architect of record. His professional stamp is on every page. Did you verify his credentials?" Bell's confidence wavered slightly. "He showed me some documents, but anyone can fake identification." Martinez realized they had a problem. A big problem that was being documented by multiple witnesses with video cameras. The ride to Denver Police Headquarters took 12 minutes, during which Foster mentally documented every detail for the lawsuit he knew was coming. Times, statements, witness names, badge numbers, everything that would matter when this nightmare reached federal court. He'd prosecuted enough civil rights cases in his consulting work to understand exactly what evidence would be needed. At the station, Bell walked Foster through booking while maintaining his conviction that he'd made a legitimate arrest. Foster remained calm and professional, knowing that his behavior was likely being recorded and would matter in the legal proceedings ahead. Desk Sergeant Robert Chin looked up as they entered, a 23-year veteran. Chin had seen enough police mistakes to recognize when something didn't look right. A man in expensive work clothes, professional demeanor, no signs of substance abuse or mental illness, didn't fit the profile of someone typically arrested for trespassing. "What do we have, Bell?" "Trespassing at the Denver Civic Center construction site. Subject claims to be the project architect, but couldn't provide adequate verification." Chin examined Foster's identification and professional license, then looked at Bell with growing concern. "Did you verify these credentials?" "I determined they could be fraudulent." Foster spoke clearly for the booking recording. "Sergeant, I am Alan Foster, licensed architect for the city of Denver. I was inspecting my own construction project when Officer Bell arrested me. My professional credentials are legitimate and verifiable through the Colorado State Board of Architects. Chin picked up his phone and called the state licensing board. Within 3 minutes, he had confirmation that Alan Foster was indeed a registered architect with an active license and no disciplinary actions. He hung up and immediately called Captain Kira Novak. Captain Novak arrived within 10 minutes, reviewed the situation, and felt her stomach drop. 28 years of police work had taught her to recognize career-ending mistakes, and Bell had just made a spectacular one. Mr. Foster, I'm Captain Novak. I apologize profusely for this situation. Officer Bell will be placed on administrative leave immediately pending a full investigation. Foster nodded, but remained focused. Captain, I need all body camera footage preserved. I need the names and badge numbers of all officers involved, and I need to know that this incident will be thoroughly investigated. Meanwhile, the construction site videos were exploding across social media. Elias Ford's footage of Foster being handcuffed while wearing professional work attire had been shared hundreds of times within the first hour. Miguel Santos posted a video explaining Foster's reputation in the construction community, describing him as one of Denver's most respected architects. The hashtag arresting the architect began trending in Denver social media circles. Local news outlets picked up the story by noon. Foster's colleagues at the city planning department watched in horror as their lead architect's arrest went viral. Elena Voss, the city planning director, issued an immediate statement supporting Foster and condemning his arrest. Alan Foster is one of Denver's most distinguished architects. Arresting him for inspecting his own project represents a complete failure of police training and judgment. By 2 p.m., Foster had retained legal counsel and was preparing for what would become one of the largest police misconduct settlements in Denver history. The construction site remained shut down pending his return, costing the city additional money in project delays. Bell's 6-month police career was effectively over. His name would soon join the national database of decertified officers, ensuring he could never work in law enforcement again. The city's legal department began calculating settlement costs, while Foster's phone rang with interview requests from local media outlets. Officer Ethan Bell's termination came exactly 2 weeks after his arrest of Alan Foster. The termination letter was direct and final. Officer Bell arrested a licensed city architect at his own construction site, despite being shown professional credentials, witness verification, and documented project authorization. His failure to conduct basic verification procedures and his dismissal of overwhelming evidence demonstrates unfitness for law enforcement duties. Employment terminated immediately. Bell's name was entered into the National Decertification Index, ensuring he could never work as a police officer in any jurisdiction. At 24 years old, his law enforcement career was over before it truly began, destroyed by 6 months of poor judgment, culminating in one catastrophically bad decision. The city of Denver settled Foster's lawsuit 18 months later for $3.1 million, one of the largest police misconduct settlements in the city's history. But the financial impact extended far beyond the settlement. The construction project had been delayed for 3 weeks while Foster dealt with legal proceedings and media attention, costing taxpayers an additional $400,000 in contractor delays and schedule modifications. Foster's testimony before the Denver City Council was powerful and precise. I spent 15 years earning the respect of my profession and the trust of this city. Officer Bell destroyed that in 15 minutes, based on nothing but his assumptions about who belongs in positions of authority. The settlement money doesn't restore my reputation or erase the humiliation of being handcuffed at my own workplace. The Denver Police Department implemented sweeping reforms in response to the incident. New officers would complete extended field training with mandatory verification protocols before any arrest. Body camera footage would be reviewed within 24 hours of any arrest involving professional credentials. Most significantly, any officer with 3 or more complaints involving similar patterns would face automatic suspension pending investigation. Captain Kira Novak personally oversaw the development of new training programs focused on recognizing and respecting professional authority in various contexts. We cannot allow officers to criminalize competence, she stated in her reform announcement. Professional credentials exist for a reason, and our officers must be trained to recognize and verify them. Foster returned to his construction site 1 month after the arrest, greeted by a construction crew that had never lost faith in his leadership. The project was completed 6 months later, on budget despite the delays, and received architectural awards for innovative design and community integration. But Foster never forgot the lesson of that Tuesday morning. The settlement money is acknowledgement that what happened was wrong, he reflected in a later interview. But money doesn't prevent the next rookie officer from making the same assumptions about the next black professional who doesn't fit their expectations. Bell attempted to appeal his termination through the police union, but withdrew the appeal when presented with the overwhelming evidence against him. He left Colorado and has not returned to law enforcement. This case represents more than one officer's mistake. It exposes how quickly inexperience mixed with unchecked bias can destroy careers, waste taxpayer money, and undermine public trust. When officers assume criminality instead of investigating legitimacy, everyone pays the price. And if you believe that competence shouldn't be criminalized, that professional expertise deserves respect regardless of who demonstrates it, then subscribe to our channel. We're committed to documenting these patterns of injustice and demanding accountability from those who swore to serve and protect. This isn't just about one architect or one rookie cop. It's about the systems that allow bias to override evidence and the people brave enough to demand better. Together, we can shine light on injustice and push for the changes our communities deserve.